Right, here we are talking about coaching. My name is Yannick. I'm here with Siwash. Hey, Siwash.
Hey, Yannick. Good to be back.
And shout out to Nikki, who's trekking through New Zealand with her bicycle. I love your trips. So we have a big topic for a short amount of time. So let me get right to it. The question here is, how much leadership do we need to exhibit as coaches when we start off a relationship? The curious paradox here that I found is that a lot of people advise, especially the ones that with a sales head on, with good reason, that in the beginning it's important to exhibit a certain amount of leadership. For example, by framing coaching in a particular way, by giving your opinion on what the cadence should be and how much it costs, and guiding a client through a process when you meet them the first time, so that they feel safe by the frame that you are creating. It's easier for a client to sign up to coaching when you take them by the hand and lead them through a good process to help them figure out what this is. You tell them with clarity what coaching can provide, how this would work, or, to the best of your knowledge, show up with confidence, show up with with the authority that a leadership position brings, and the safety that, that you feel when somebody takes you by the hand and, exudes this kind of confidence that this is going to be helpful for you and how it's going to work for it to be helpful, right? That's why the 10-step processes and coaching systems and clear packages, the clarity and certainty that comes with that, or at least is implied with that, even if it's an illusion, or even if it's a potential that is being communicated with confidence, right? Mm-hmm. That kind of leadership helps to sell. No doubt about it. You will sell a lot more coaching that way. The paradox comes in that coaching, as I see it, and as many of our colleagues see it, is not something that you lead and guide a client through. It's co-created. It's a partnership. You facilitate the client tapping into their own resources, finding their own answers. In a way, it's the opposite of leadership. It depends on how you relate to leadership. The kind of leadership from the back where the leader holds space for you to do your best work. I'm not saying that one or the other is better necessarily. Sometimes we need a leader, especially in times of crisis, that takes us by the hand, shows us the exit or the way forward, and allows you to follow, takes you by the hand, and pushes you, pulls you, whatever is necessary. Those kind of coaches exist, and sometimes you need them, right?
Yeah.
But certainly the professional coaching buddies, they define and frame coaching as something that is a partnership, that is facilitative, that is holding space for someone to find their own answers. So the paradox here is that you sell a lot more coaching when you show up with leadership, but then it becomes much more difficult to work with someone in a way that is a co-created partnership, because you're setting up the relationship wrong. If you start with a lot of leadership, then clients will expect a lot of leadership going forward. So if you then all of a sudden switch into this coaching mode, it can feel a bit confusing, right? So if you start the conversation, the relationship, co-create it, right? What kind of cadence do you think would work for you, rather than, I recommend we meet twice a month or once a month or whatever your cadence is, right? My sessions are 90 minutes or 2 hours or 50 minutes, whatever, if you co-create that, it's harder to sign people up because they have to do a lot more work to start with, and they have less certainty about what this is and how it's going to work. Yeah. So in some ways there can be less trust, because it seems like, oh, maybe this person doesn't seem so professional to a normal person that doesn't know about coaching, because they're like, oh, this is not clear. Like, I'm not quite sure what I'm saying yes to. I don't know what's going to happen, because in reality, nobody knows what's going to happen going forward. We don't know what doors we will open. So that's the paradox. If you more leadership is going to help you sign up clients, but then it's going to be harder to work with them in this facilitative way. Whereas, it might be harder to sign up clients when you come in and co-create from the beginning, but then the whole relationship is set up in a way that you would want the work to be. Right. So I know you got a big sales head, right? So in some ways I know what you think about this, but maybe the better question is not which one is better or which one is helpful, but is it actually possible to switch into this coaching head? What could we do to make that not awkward, that all of a sudden your coach switches from leadership into holding space, right? So I said a lot. We have little time, I said. I'm curious what your thoughts are. And then maybe at that point, we just like allow the thoughts to go out there and let people engage with it.
Yeah. No, I think it's an important question. And I think for me, this has evolved over time. And in the way I've kind of put it on my iPad is, that 80%. So for me, it's like the first 80% of that conversation is co-creation. And I think it just needs a little bit of leadership in terms of structure. So if I let's say have a 90-minute call with someone, that first hour, there's some structure to it in terms of like, okay, I'm gonna explore what this person really wants, right? Why is it important to them? What are the obstacles? What have they tried? So I'm gonna get really clear on that. But really, it's their stuff. Like, I'm not saying we need to work on this stuff, right? So that's really co-created. And what I found, I think now probably working with over 500 coaches, what I found is that you need that kind of, well, I call it leadership as well. You need that leadership in that last 20%. And that last 20% is so important. So one of the things that I've seen, Yannick, is that with really experienced coaches that have been coaching 8 years, 10 years, that have invested a lot of money in coaching trainings and even working with different, business mentors, is where they struggle in that last part because they don't have a clear structure. And it's just more like, very open. I'm not saying that's not co-creating, but I think what we need is we need a structure, right? And that's for me what I see as leadership. It's like you take people through a structure, right? You take people through a structure that allows them, that gives them clarity, because people need clarity on how does this look like, this thing that I'm gonna, buy. How does this look like in if we continue this? But I think that the other thing to touch on is that it doesn't need to be. I think the mistake that a lot of coaches make, and this mistake that a lot of salespeople make in general, is that it's very much one-sided, right? And that's how some see it as leadership, is that, I'm basically saying this is how we're gonna do, and this is the price, and that's it. So for me, there's a lot of structure. So in that first part, the first 80%, I feel like it's, maybe 10% leadership, where you put a structure, but it's a lot of co-creation. And the second part, it's probably 80% leadership, but you need that co-creation there, right? So for me, that comes by, you having a clear structure on what to do, but then you ask questions. So it's not so much like, hey, this is what we're going to do. It's like, okay, here are the different ways we can work together. Here's what that looks like. Which one speaks to you? What are your thoughts on that? Right? Okay, we could work together once a month. With some clients, I work twice a month, or we meet every week. How does that sound to you? Which one speaks more to you? And you don't need to ask those exact questions, but again, bringing it back to the client, right? And so I think this seeking permission and asking questions, and through those questions, we can kind of co-create how our work's going to look like. So it doesn't feel very pushy, right? But at the same time, they do still feel that, okay, you get experience with this.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the questions that I get a lot from coaches, and maybe we can address this in a future podcast as well. It's like, well, what do I put on my menu? What's the thing I offer? The client often says, well, it's almost like the client becomes a little bit passive, and it's like, well, you let me know, what do you think is right? Should we do weekly? Should we do bi-weekly? Right?
Exactly. And that's a question I definitely get a lot, like, how is it going to work? And I really like choice. It's like the deep-seated value is around freedom and choice.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed I've done recently, really, is I kept adding choices, and then I ended up with like 7 choices, and I realized, oh, this is overwhelming for clients. It doesn't actually do what I wanted to do. So I still send people the menu, right? And sometimes I still talk them through it when I'm not quite sure. But I do now offer very often a recommendation if I have a sense like that one of these packages would really quite work well. And I do keep it open. I said, like, well, from what you've been telling me, I think this would be a good way forward to start with. We could still shift into something else. I'll still send you what's on the menu, so to speak. And what do you think?
Exactly.
And then you can still figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I think you're kind of doing that, and I'm also very much in the middle. I think a lot of sales trainings teach you to be like a doctor, and what I mean with that is that basically you have the conversation, and you don't ask the patient like which medicine do you need. You basically say, okay, based on your what you just described to me and what you want is you need these paracetamol, so you need these painkillers. So you prescribe them
Yeah.
the thing of your menu. That okay,
Yeah.
you need 3 months of coaching or 6. Personally, I'm a little bit more in the middle. And what I mean in the middle is on one side, I think it's just basically completely leaving it open. Well, we can do 3, 6, 12. We can do once a month, twice a month, 4 times. You choose. I'm open for it. Right? I think that what I think personally, serves most relationships is just coming in the middle and saying, well, this is what we can do, and maybe making a little personal recommendation. And no, that shouldn't be always the highest one, right? I think sometimes people think like, oh, well, let me recommend this one, but I think it's just looking at, because if you give people too many choices, often they get overwhelmed. They don't make a choice, right?
Even just narrowing it down, if you have 7 options on the menu and you say, well, if you want more flexibility, I would recommend you this. And if you want to spend less initially, then I would recommend you this. Or if you want, longer sessions or having the freedom to have longer sessions, I would really go with that one. If you narrow it down to 2 or 3 choices, much easier to make a choice.
Exactly. And I think over time you develop more of your own style, right? But I think again, if for what I've seen from most coaches, that this works quite well. I think the doctor approach works really well for people that have like a very specific product, but that's often more kind of consulting, right? Like he's like, oh, I have this one program that in 3 months helps you lose 10 kg of weight, or this, I'm gonna take you to my 12-step process to transform your marriage. But then it's a lot more like a curriculum, a course, or step-by-step process. I think with coaching, a lot of times it's more like, oh, yes, you want to work on this? Well, here's the different ways we can work together. And I think bringing it back to the conversation, if someone says like, I want to work on my marriage, well, what's the difference between 3, 6, 12? Just maybe give them an idea. Well, in 3 months' time, this is how much time we have to explore these different areas. In 6 months, we have more time to explore, and we could probably, achieve more or get a bit further down the line.
And also the people who come in with a lot of leadership and a lot of, confidence about certain results, I see them in supervision quite a lot, and the weight of the responsibility is weighing so heavily on them that it's difficult for them to really stay present with what's in front of them, because they feel they need to deliver, and then they jump into rescue and they give lots of advice, and then they feel terrible when things are not working out, because sometimes it just works out like that because you don't know these people even after a few hours of initial conversations.
Yeah. The interesting is the paradox is, right, that even though you learn most of the time to sell the outcomes, if the paradox I think is that if you actually confidently explain what you can do, and they say, well, I think we can get there, but that's not in my control, that's not in our control. Paradox is actually people are more attracted to you as a coach. I think is that I think that used kind of, I saw that a lot in my early stage of the business, is where I'm like, okay, I need to sell the outcomes, I need to promise outcomes. But actually people, kind of know that you can promise outcomes, right? And it sets,
and just saying something like, from where I'm sitting, it seems like this is definitely something we can do, or like, sounds to me like we can definitely arrive there. From what I've heard, I'm very confident that we can sort this out together. So there's many ways in which we can say that without making guarantees that then need to weigh us down, and that can be very authentic. But hey, Siwash, you've got a client very soon. We said it's a big topic. I think we've come quite a long way. I'd be very curious to hear what people think about this and how much leadership you are taking when you are in your consultations or, the first encounters. How do you navigate, the weights of both? How do you, what's the right balance in your opinion?
Yeah.
Cool. Siwash, thank you so much. I appreciate you. See you soon. And people out there, hear you soon, I guess.
All right, cool. Bye-bye.
All right, that was us talking about coaching. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I appreciate your commitment to being the best coach you can be. I always say, if any of this resonates, make it swing. we grow through conversations. So if you found value in this episode, please go on and share it, or with another coaching colleague of yours or a friend. Anything that we can do to help people get inspired to reflect more on their coaching and be better coaches. I really believe in the generative impact that coaching has. So if you wanted to support the coaching and this mission, then what you can do is share this, right? Talk to somebody, send the link to someone, have that conversation with someone. What would really help us is to leave a positive review or a rating on one of the podcasting platforms. Generally, the more people we reach, the more time and effort we can put into creating these episodes for you. And higher quality means also more conversations, maybe inviting high-profile guests into the conversation. That'd be a dream of ours. So you can make this worth it. And I appreciate you being with us, and I appreciate you considering to help. So thank you. See you soon. Send us a question.